Your Creative Push, episode 35.
Even struggling for a few years would probably be much a more satisfying experience than cruising in a job I didn't particularly enjoy.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Marc Allante. Marc is an artist whose work is inspired in both form and style by Western and Eastern influences. He was born in Hong Kong, but has also lived in Sydney and London. He merges traditional Chinese inks with European watercolor and pen techniques in a contemporary style. He is self-taught and utilizes many different techniques and subject matters to expand his work. Marc also runs the blog redinkstone.com, a website dedicated to helping aspiring artists achieve successful and sustainable careers in the art world. And Marc joins me today, or tonight, from Hong Kong. I just got out of work, so it's 3 a.m. here. But I guess it's the afternoon or evening there?
Yeah, it's late afternoon at the moment here. But thanks for having me on board.
Of course, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
No problem.
I usually like to start out by asking artists their creative origin story. And I was hoping you could tell us the story, I guess it's actually 2 stories about Reddit, because not only are they awesome stories, but one of them actually literally shows your entire creative origins since you basically first started drawing. So could you maybe tell us that story about Reddit?
Sure. So I'll go through the first one, which is, basically I didn't know anything about Reddit at the time, but I had this sort of frantic call one day from one of my friends who's an avid user. And he was basically like, oh my God, I posted one of your artworks online and it's reached the front page, which meant completely, absolutely nothing to me. So I didn't even know what Reddit was at that point.
Sure.
So he was going nuts. He was like, just, sign up now, don't argue, go start speaking to people because they're asking a lot of questions and stuff, and they don't believe me that I'm your friend. So, very, sometimes in Reddit fashion where they can be a little bit discerning in those kind of things. But, so I went on and I had this huge response to a line painting that I did 3 years ago. And yeah, it was absolutely massive, and had a really good experience because I was going through a lot of tough stuff at that time personally. So it was really quite uplifting, and it really did sort of kickstart in some ways an art career, even though at the time I was working in financial risk, which is completely opposite end of the scale. And I was just doing art as I was still selling at that point, but I was doing art as a hobby more than anything, and just in my spare time when I could. And so that kind of got me onto Reddit, and I thought, this could be a really interesting thing to do again. And at the time, actually, so my mother, when I say going through tough personal experience, but my mother was just diagnosed with terminal cancer, and so we were actually literally just moving her back to my home. So I could keep an eye out on her, and she was overseas at the time, so it just made a lot more sense. And while I was doing all of the packing and helping her move and getting across, I found basically a file she had kept of all of these paintings that I'd done since I was 2 years old. So I only shared, I think, 25 years on this Reddit article, but I put them all together. I have actually a lot more of those. I put them all together from years 2 to 25. I think there was 1 or 2 years missing, and then I posted that online. And that is what went completely, the first time I thought, oh, this is pretty interesting. I'm getting a lot of interest, as well as, my website's benefiting a lot. But the second time, that's when it went completely viral. And then I was featured on a huge number of international publications, a lot of these kind of news aggregators, as well as social media aggregator sites. And completely. I was busy for months after that. But as I was saying, I was busy whilst trying to juggle a lot of other things at the same time. So it was an interesting time, but it definitely helped me immensely because it helped keep my mind off things. And obviously it's seeing a dream come into fruition in some sense. But it was a lot of work as well.
Now, does he brag about basically starting like
Oh yeah, he loves
jumpstarting your
it.
career? Yeah.
And yeah, he gets a lot of free stuff all the time.
Yeah, I bet.
But no, he's a really great guy, and I definitely have a lot owed to him as well.
Sure. Do you think that had it not been for that, you would have actually like kind of gone forward in your art career that way?
I mean, I had been picked up by some blogs previous to that moment, but it was definitely like, I probably skipped a good few years that it normally takes to get to like the level that I was, say, within a year after that post. Because I mean, I have friends who are in the art world as well as painting themselves, and they're fantastic. They're technically incredible, but they just don't get that exposure. So that is, an element of luck, which I can't be more thankful about. So I think it was a huge thing to happen there. But I also think that it does require a lot of effort and a lot of work to ensure that you properly utilize that momentum. And I've hoped that in the last few years since it's happened, that and to a degree it has, because it's been able to sustain itself now, that I can continue this as now a full-time and professional job.
Yeah, and congratulations on that too.
Cheers.
Has it been over a year now, or close to a year?
No, less than that. So it's almost 6 months. But
oh, you're just a baby.
Yeah, exactly. Very early stages. So I might come crawling back in 6 months' time, being like, oh, I was wrong. I made a terrible mistake. But at the moment, it's looking okay. It's looking that I've made the right decision.
That's great. And I just have how does that feel? Because I know a lot of people listening, their mouths are salivating with just the idea of, of passing off that job and doing, full time, that thing that they, dream about, that they love. What's that like for you right now?
It's incredible. It's just a fantastic experience, because you are doing something you love on a daily basis. And I'm sure other people can relate to when you're at your job, you kind of fantasize and then imagine what your life would be like on that other side, right? And I certainly did. And so suddenly to just unburden yourself from a lot of those worries is, well, I wouldn't say worries, but to be able to unburden yourself and finally achieve that is absolutely incredible. And yeah, I was very, very emotional when it first finally happened. And funnily enough, that
Sure.
I'm a very risk adverse person. As I mentioned, I was in financial risk. My entire job was analyzing risk.
Right.
and so my girlfriend will tell you as well, I was bringing up spreadsheets. I was calculating everything down to the last minutiae. Can I actually do this? Is this going to work? And I was in a good place in my job. It wasn't terrible. I liked my bosses. I liked my colleagues. I'd just gotten a promotion as well, which they were a bit pissed off with when I kind of handed in that notice. Yeah, so it was in a good place. And I was thinking to myself, am I really going to just throw this all away to pursue this? And, it just came down to the point where I was what am I going to regret more in life? Am I going to regret sort of a job that I'm kind of okay with, or following through with a passion that is clearly working at this point, and something that I can, live off and sustain myself with? And even if I wasn't, thankfully it has worked out, and I'm earning a decent income from it. But even if it wasn't, I think even struggling for a few years would probably be much more satisfying experience than, kind of cruising in a job I didn't particularly enjoy.
For sure. And yeah, I commend you too. So many people talk about just quitting your job and just going for what you dream of. And I think that's somewhat irresponsible advice to give. I do think that, most human beings have the ability to make things work once they make a decision, if they do kind of leave that stable 9-to-5 job. So
yeah,
I do think that there is a lot to be said for, not necessarily making Excel spreadsheets to plan it out quite that much, but
yeah, you can see how different lives I had.
Yeah. No, but good on you for it.
Yeah, and I completely agree as well that yes, it's this great fantasy and it's this fantastic dream to be able to just, just kind of say, am I allowed to swear on this podcast? I'm not
Absolutely,
sure.
go for it.
Just like, oh, like, fuck it. I'm just going to do this. I don't care. Throw the paperwork in the air and hand in the notice. But, in reality, a lot of people have, responsibilities and shit they got to do that, you say it gets in the way, but you have to do it. And I probably would have thought of doing it earlier, but I had like my mom to take care of, I had medical bills to pay, I had mortgage to look at. There's all these things as well, so that was eating away at me, and like I had to make sure that I, number one, had enough savings if things went completely tits up, and number two, that that this was a viable endeavor, that it wasn't something that I was just completely going to be like, oh, I'll quit and see how it happens. I needed to, for me at least, like in my character, like I needed to know that it would work. And I think, I know I'll work hard for that as well. But that was part of the whole process of juggling the full-time job with this part-time art, and then switching that out eventually.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, I congratulated you for quitting, but I should also congratulate you for continuing with the art throughout your entire life. What advice would you give? Because a lot of people listening aren't necessarily looking to, make the leap that you just made and are completely happy with just incorporating art into their life, just a little bit, getting better every day.
Sure.
What advice would you give to them that helped you out doing that?
Well, I mean, like, first of all, it was very much for me an escape, and it always has been something that I really enjoy. If I'm procrastinating, I'm painting. So that's one thing where, that's been a constant thing in my life, and I've always really enjoyed it as well. So from a kid to even adulthood, like when I'm taking exams, when I'm doing kind of stuff, and if I want to do something else that like either takes my mind off things or calms me down a little bit, I'm painting and drawing and doing something creative. And I think it's important, not just as a distraction, but in some ways, like your own sanity as well, right? Like you want to be able to continue the things that you love. And even if you're dedicating half an hour every day, it's going to improve that process and those skills that you're using. And that doesn't like necessarily just relate to, I'd say, art, but like anything, the more that you practice and the more that you dedicate yourself to that subject or to that skill, regardless of if you're doing 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours or less, as long as you're doing a little bit constantly, you will see improvement and you will see results. So I think that's an important thing to keep up over a long period of time. And obviously, like, it's something I've done since I was quite young, and that was part of like what was encouraged at home. But I definitely did do it throughout high school, throughout uni, even when I had nothing sort of pushing me in that direction. And I think that's an important thing to do. That.
Did you ever have like a long period of time where you like didn't even pick up a paintbrush or a pen?
Yes, it was. I think in my article that went viral, there was one painting that took a year, or drawing that took a year. So it's the one that goes from 17 to 18.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that took...
I was wondering if you just didn't know if you were 17 or 18 or... Wow.
Yeah, so, I mean, that one took a long time. And it was actually, it was an assignment. Because I was thinking about applying to visual arts at uni, actually. And so this was just before that time. And I remember finishing that and being like, I don't know whether I can do that, like, again or always. And so I did put down my pen for maybe a year after that.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's like an itch you got to scratch. And then sort of after that year, I went straight back there. And then it was again, like, I'd say at the lowest or like the least productive times, I'd be maybe doing something once a month. But generally, I'm still like, since I was 19, I've been doing at least once a month, sometimes once a fortnight, basically a painting or drawing that I see through to completion.
And throughout all that time, you can tell that your work is yours, but you definitely dabble in different styles. What advice would you give to somebody who kind of wants to dabble in different styles like you did?
I think it's important to try different things. And because like I never went to art school. It's kind of a necessity as well, just because sometimes I'm learning on the job or while I'm doing the artwork. And I do read and I do go like online to try and like find tips and sometimes I'm like, oh, that was really cool. I didn't know I could do that. And then I'll incorporate that aspect into my art from that point on. And it's that learning process that I really enjoy as well, like that whole development. I don't think anyone should remain static. Obviously, a style is very important. I think it's actually crucial to be able to be both recognized and also in some ways sellable, because I think one of the good examples is when you look at sort of hyper realistic art. I think it's absolutely technically incredible. I can't do it. When I see that other artists doing that as well, it's beautiful work. But I've known from my friends and from other people that it doesn't sell, and I think that's because there's a lot of people out there who have that technical skill, who are as good as that, but they don't have that sort of stylistic form or edge that allows them to differentiate from other people. And so I think rather than completely going one way, that an artist should try to evolve, should try to experiment with new things. And I think that really lends itself to both doing well as finding new ways to create your art and go forward with it.
Yeah, and a lot of times when you're trying out something new, you might not even stay in that particular style or whatever it is, but it's funny how you always kind of seem to learn something from it, and even years later, that lesson that you learned might come up later.
Exactly, and it's they're always valuable. Like I think whenever at least in regards to art and painting, whenever you try something, you don't really forget it, right? You know that certain technique will work well in this way, and if you ever want to use that in the future, at least you've had the experience of how that works, how the paint reacts, how the paper reacts, and things like that. So so I think trying new things is very important, but doing that in a way that's still, as you mentioned, like identifiable as your own.
For sure. And so you didn't go to art school. Has that ever affected your motivation or your confidence in any way?
I think sometimes, but I just really enjoy the process. I try not too much to dwell on the fact I don't know this or I don't know this. I'm like, look, I'm painting. I'm really enjoying it. Hopefully other people enjoy it so that they buy it as well. And so I think that's been my motto for most of the time because when I was doing this with the job and with everything going on with my mom, the painting thing was my enjoyment, was my sheer delight. And I've tried to keep that aspect of it, which is why sometimes I'll get commissions. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't feel like doing that.
Sure.
And I think that's important as well, that, that shines through, and that you're not kind of putting yourself in a situation where you're creating stuff that you don't enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. And the art school thing, I think is I don't know what the word is, bogus. I think it's so easy for people to learn, and you can learn by doing, and you can also, with the internet, you can just learn so much and be inspired by so much. So
I wouldn't say bogus, because I think at the same time you are learning a lot of skills from very professional, well, you'd hopefully very professional and sort of experienced teachers who can show you stuff that you've never done. So there's sides of it that I do regret in that sense, but as you said, I think it's not necessary at least in this day and age, because there's so many resources out there that allow you to basically learn pretty much any technique that you want. And they're free. So there is that kind of aspect that I think people should consider as well. And also I think in uni, and I do not regret this at all, I didn't study art, but actually I studied English literature and history, which is also a completely artsy kind of random subject. But
cool.
If I had to do it again, I probably would have done a more skills-based degree, but then continued my art as a hobby afterwards or alongside of it. Just because I think you become more well-rounded a person. If your focus is solely art, I think this is the struggle that I see. And part of when I started my website, Reading Stone, I see these incredible artists who are technically fantastic. I'm completely in awe of what they can do. but a lot of the failings come from a lack of ability to market themselves, to understand sort of the business side of things. And I think it's vital to learn those skills as well to be able to succeed, because and it's sad to say, but sometimes the art is only a portion of like being successful in the art world.
Absolutely, and that was going to be my next question, actually. People can learn so much about art and techniques and stuff like that on, YouTube or Lynda or so many other resources, but the actual biz is harder to come by. So could you actually go into Red Ink Stone a little bit more?
Yeah, it's very, very early stages. So I only started at the beginning of this year. But the ideal plan behind it is basically just to go a very honest kind of like background into the admin, into the marketing, into the sales, and all of the stuff that I think artists aren't as exposed to as much. Because for me, like, social media plays a hugely important role for me to sell my work. And the ability to do that effectively is not only gets you a wider audience, it gets you a wide audience that you have direct contact with. And, the traditional model of art is you usually pair up with a gallery, and it's very often it's a 50% split straight off the bat. So you have to give away 50 of everything you or you're hoping to make. And you are confined to solely their list of clients or invitees. It's funny because, in this day and age, everyone has access to everyone, which is sometimes not a good thing.
Scary.
But yeah, but it's true in that, like, everyone has a voice that they can, stand on their pedestal and shout out and whatever. So it's important to understand like how to utilize those tools as well. And so I think, social media marketing is a very important thing, a very important skill. But the other things as well, it's like, I guess, effectively positioning yourself, networking with people, which Hong Kong is very good for, because, you can go out to galleries, you can go out to shows, and speak with people as well, and like create deals as well. And I think in any business, in any endeavor, the ability to understand contracts is vitally important as well. And it's those kind of skills that are not immediately obvious as needed, but having now done this for a while, I do see these as the skills that are absolutely necessary to succeed. And so I'm hoping to, like, you were joking about Excel spreadsheets first, but I mean, one of the things that I want to put up soon is like finance for artists, like how to manage them properly and what you should look out for. Because it's a simple thing, you would think, but a lot of people don't look at it and don't utilize it as well as they should, I think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I was only joking about the Excel. I'm an Excel dork. I have Excel sheets for anything that I can have an Excel sheet for, actually. And it's, vital to so many different things, just to keep everything in one place. As far as, having guests on the show and what I make at work and, everything else. Yeah. It's very, very important to keep stuff organized.
I think I'd hate 12-year-old me would hate my current self for saying that, but yeah, it's very true.
Yeah.
It's good to be organized in that sense.
Your current self can look at your 12-year-old self and be like, "Bitch, look how good of a drawer I am now."
And like, I did it, yo.
That's awesome. Marc, this has been really inspiring. I draw so much inspiration from your story, and I really appreciate that idea of, everybody is going to get some sort of a lucky break at some point, and you just kind of have to like just be ready for it and really try to take advantage of it like the way that you did.
Sure.
I commend you too, and
thank you,
and congratulations on quitting your job. Cheers. Man. That's awesome.
Thank you so much. And there's luck and there's also manufactured luck. I think there's definitely ways that you can help it along.
For sure.
So as you said, it's good to be prepared, and it's good to have the right tools in place so that if or when it does happen, that you're ready for it.
Absolutely. Before we say goodbye, I was wondering if you could do what we call our final push. And this is where I ask you to reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of somebody that you've already inspired today and really just push them into taking action into their creativity.
Sure. Well, I think the first thing I'd have to say is, like, I did this for a good 4, almost 5 years, completely part-time. It was, in toilet breaks, it was in the evenings, it was on holidays, it was on public holidays, whatever time I could spare was to realize this dream and working hard at it. And I think more than anything, it's that dedication and that kind of workaholic attitude that helps you and pushes you. So I've managed to do this, and I think that anyone has the opportunity to do it as well. And it is a very, very scary leap, but I can tell you now that I'm the happiest I've been in a very, very long time, or ever. So, it's worth it.
Absolutely. You sound like you're glowing, like a new relationship.
It is, 6 months in, but we'll see after a few years.
It's time to have the talk soon.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. You can find Marc on his website, which is marcallante.com, and that's Marc with a C, so MarcAllante.com, and on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and basically everything else. He is Marc Allante Art, and you can also find him on redinkstone.com, which is an awesome resource. I've already checked it out. You can also find all these links and everything we talked about today in the show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/Marc Allante. I'll also throw a link up there. The article that you wrote, How I Quit My Corporate Job to Become a Professional Artist, which almost made me cry.
Oh, cheers.
Yeah. It's a really great story and just super inspirational. So, Marc, thank you so much, man, for coming on the show today and for giving us that push.
No, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
And there you have it. Great conversation with Marc. I really dig his accent. I dig his vibe. And anyone who uses the word fortnight to measure, periods of time is okay in my book. But I just really love his story. And, the idea that, lucky breaks will come. Some will be bigger than others, but you just kind of have to be prepared to take advantage of them and be confident enough to jump on them and, to see what happens. That is, of course, if you want to do something like quit your job. But even if you don't want to quit your job, there are still giant things you can do with a lucky break. And it's all about just being aware that they're going to come and waiting for your opportunities and taking advantage of them. So really great stuff. And I really appreciate Marc for coming on the show. Definitely be sure to head to the show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/Marc Allante to check out his work. And if you're interested in seeing what a career might be like doing your art, check out Red Inkstone. I think it's definitely a great resource, and I think Marc's a really good guy to have on your side, so definitely check that out. On tomorrow's show, we have Diana Gabaldon.
Don't let yourself be stopped by lack of time. Then when you're juggling a full-time job and trying to be creative on the side, there's always this problem. You come home dead tired and you're thinking, oh my God, I don't have the energy, and a day passes and you don't write anything, you don't draw anything, whatever. You can't do that. What you need to do is look for or set aside some time in the day. It doesn't need to be a big amount of time. If you have 10 minutes, that's enough, but it has to be that 10 minutes. Sit down and write for 10 minutes. Or sit down and draw for 10 minutes. And, the next day, do it again. If you keep doing this 10 minutes every day, eventually you'll have a book. If you don't, you won't.
This was a super exciting interview for me. Diana is the author of Outlander, and we talk about how Outlander was, when she started it, just kind of a practice novel for her. It was just that. It was practice for learning how to write a novel, and it just turned into what it is now. 8 books, soon to be 9 books, wildly popular, Stars television show. Just a kind of incredible what can come from kind of just starting out with no real intention to have your art or your writing or whatever be much anything bigger than just practice and doing it for the love of writing. So definitely check that out tomorrow. Hopefully you were pushed enough to get your work done today. If not, we will be here for you tomorrow. Thanks so much for listening and subscribing. Have a productive day, and we will see you tomorrow. Have a great day.